us there. Nice to have you from wherever you're watching. Take a moment to register online there. You'll see some opportunities, some places to connect there, some places for offering if you wish to give there as well. We appreciate it. In here, register your attendance. And you can also find that online link on your phone there. And you can do that or do that later. Or bring it up here when we're singing our song together. So, but do register your attendance. I'm having trouble with my little headset here. We'll see how it works. So, a couple quick things. First of all, some of you have been asking about Linda, who had surgery a couple of weeks ago. It was pretty major surgery. Some of you all know all about that. But just to say, she's doing well. She's recovering. Today's the first day. Hi, honey, if you're watching. I think she's watching. Well, if I were her, I wouldn't. But anyway, no, I would. Anyway, she is doing well, but I left her alone for the first time for this long, for like 4 hours this morning, 5 hours today. So keep your fingers crossed. I think she's going to be okay. She'll actually eat better because I've been feeding her, so she'll eat better than what I've been giving her. But she is recovering. She's had a few little things, some little blocks here and there, but doing well and up and moving around a little bit. So thank you for keeping her in your thoughts and prayers, and thank you for sending notes. Some of y'all send her cards and stuff and emails. She loves reading that stuff because it gets bored pretty much laying and sitting around. So thank you for all of that. What else can I report on? I think that's the main thing. No, of course, we've got those of you who are interested, we're asking about Mike Brown's memorial service. I sent out an email. If you didn't read it yet, go back and check. Make sure you got it. There's some information specifically there, but it's happening next Sunday at 2 o'clock. It'll be happening in Dallas. That's where the family decided was the best place for them to choose. They chose a place called Amplified, and it's on this side of Dallas, on this side of 35, so it's not too hard to get to, and a pretty quick trip over there. The band will be doing a couple of songs. I'll be leading and officiating the service. Several folks will be speaking, and then following that's a tribute concert of some of the best music that you could probably hear around the area with some of the best bands around the area who all played with Mike, or Mike played with them, or they love Mike because Mike was influential in their life. And so if you can, we'd love to see you over there. That's at 2 o'clock. Okay. Look at that email for more information on all of that. I think that's pretty much there. Good. Okay. All right. It's good to have you with us. We're going to get right started into it in a little while. After we get going here, I'll have a little short homily of sorts, and that will segue right into Penny giving us kind of a report on where we are. And it's so great to see you here and online, because this is important.
I'm so sorry.
I'm glad you're here for that.
Audio input too.
Thousand windows, only half the lights are out. What about these people's lives? What they might be all about.
favorite part of the whole service. So, you think it's you?
Well, I think when your partner has the volunteer sheet in front of her, washing rigs.
Well, that's my second favorite thing is for you to do it. All right.
Is this on? Okay. All right, so I have been volunteered, but I am very happy to see everybody today. Very nice to be here this morning. So the welcome candle has been lit. Please join me with on the screen. Come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leading, it doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you have broken your vows 1,000 times. Come, yet again.
11:11. It's time to stand and sing a Christmas song together. Y'all ready? It goes like this. Hark the herald angels sing, let good hearts and voices bring peace on earth and mercy high. God is in His presence style. Join the Lord, ye nations rise. Join the triumph of the sky. With angelic hosts proclaim, Christ is born in Bethlehem. Hark the herald angels sing, sing our hearts as offering it down. Another verse here. Hail the heavenly light of peace. Hail the Son of righteousness. Light and life to all we praise. Wisdom and healing in His wings. And He lays His glory by. Born this light to sanctify. Born to raise us from the earth. Born to give the second birth. Hark the herald angels sing. Take our hearts as offering. Hark the herald angels sing. Take our hearts as offering. All right.
That's good. I'd go up and get the sanctuary with that stuff. We did a good job, y'all.
And, all right, so here's what I want you to do online if you like to with somebody beside you, or you can reflect upon it by yourself. But I want you all to do this with each other this morning as you greet one another, as we welcome one another in this space. It's Advent. I want you to think of your own Advent tradition that you've done that's really special about Advent. It might be an Advent calendar or something you did with your kids when they were young, or you do it yourself. Or if you don't do anything, something you'd love to see in one of those, you open up the little box every day, you open up the little slot every day, and you see something, keys to a new car, something like that. Talk about your tradition. You only got a couple of minutes, but talk about your tradition at Advent. Say hello to one another and share some story. Hey, Brodson.
All right. Isn't it delightful to walk around and chat a bit with people and just have a second, right, to share some thoughts. This morning, as we're thinking about our Kairos time, I was thinking about the tensions that sometimes go with this time of year for us. Sometimes it's about family, sometimes it's about Christmas and trying to figure out Christmas gifts and traditions and decorations. Sometimes it's as simple as driving down the street and somebody cuts you off and you just don't feel good about what's happened. So the Kairos I chose this morning is about the idea of quiet and settling into ourselves and reconnecting with the essence of who each of us individually is. Following the prayer, I am going to invite you to take a minute and meditate on these thoughts as they occur to you. First, taking a deep breath in to settle your spirit. Second, tuning into yourself and seeing how you are. And third breath, a sense of gratitude for the many gifts we have and sometimes take for granted. May you recognize in your life the presence, power, and light of your soul. May you realize that you are never alone, that your soul in its brightness and belonging connects you intimately with the rhythm of the universe. May you have respect for your individuality and difference. May you realize that the shape of your soul is unique, that you have a special destiny here, that behind the facade of your life there is something beautiful and eternal happening. May you learn to see yourself with the same delight, pride, and expectation with which God sees you in every moment.
Thank you, Penny. We've another song. Circling back to Tom's thing about what our family's tradition is for Advent, I'll share ours with you, and it's extremely controversial. I realize this. We watched the movie Die Hard. I split the room, didn't I? That's right. Okay.
It's time to make your joyful noise. Some feel it in the feast after the fast, or the oil lamps everlasting, or the solstice in the wild, or the birth of a baby child. This is your holiday song.
It's your holiday song.
No one more true, right or wrong. When our faith calls our name, someone else's does the same. Hallelujah. Thank you. So gather round, girls and boys. It's time to raise your holy noise.
Thanks, band. Nice, great music, awesome music. And of course, what y'all don't know is, of course, some of you came expecting you would, and some of you online thinking you might hear Hannah Kirby today, and some of you Elizabeth Wills, and that wasn't a bait and switch kind of thing. They both had to call in today sick. And so Brad was scrambling, our camera person, Parker, he couldn't be here. So so we were scrambling, and isn't it always fun when you have to scramble? I mean, I got these notices from Brad and from Elizabeth and from about Hannah and from Parker at about 7:30 this morning, right? Getting ready, coming down here. And so I look at Linda, and she says, she looks at me, she smiles, she goes, "All right, disruption, isn't it awesome?" It's like, yeah, that's really kind of what it's about. I hadn't even thought about that. It's like, wait and see what might happen. Yeah, maybe nobody will be there. Maybe they'll all walk out when you say, "Sorry, Hannah's not here today." So Advent is, we think of Advent as that time, right, when we sort of sit and we sort of wait and we contemplate and we're waiting for something to happen. I don't know if you've been noticing the screens we're playing every Sunday morning, the same things every Sunday morning early on. Wait for it, and then there's some quotes. So if you haven't been noticing it, check it out next week. A couple of other things, too, that you might not have noticed. The first thing is you might not have noticed that there's not a whole lot of Christmas decorations up here. So part of that reason is because, next week they're going to decorate downstairs, I understand. But they don't decorate this because it's a wedding venue, right? So the reception's decorated the way it needs to be, and then it's taken away. And as my uncle would say, it's left in as good or better condition than when they got here. So here's my invitation to you. Bring something next week, and then take it home. Bring something from home and take it. Nobody will know the difference. Just come in a little bit early, set it up here on the stage, put it on the altar, set it around on the table, bring some poinsettias, bring a wreath and hang it from the door, take it back home. I dare you. That's it. That's all I'm going to say. So here's the text I want to read to you this morning. Comes from the chapter of Luke, very familiar text, one of my favorite actually. And let me pull it up here on my phone. Comes from Luke chapter 1, verse 42. Mary has already received the announcement from the angel that she's going to bear a child. That was actually the text for this morning for the whole church. I'm going to read something else because it just occurred to me I had not really understood what this was about. I love being a part of 1111 and being a part of the leadership here because, I've had to reframe my reality over the years. I've had to rethink how I do theology over the years, partly because of where I've been for the 25 years when I was traveling around as a storyteller and a musician and a kids entertainer, and partly because things change. And I was changing, and I'd been involved with 1111 for years and years with the band, and take this over, and it's been a fascinating journey, and I hope that you've understood that it's been a mutual journey. I'm journeying with you in this whole process. So these are where I'm thinking these days. So here's the scripture text. You remember this one. She's meeting Elizabeth now, her cousin. And when Elizabeth heard the greeting of Mary, the babe leapt in her womb, and Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Spirit, and she exclaimed with a loud cry, "Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb. And why is this granted me, that the mother of my Lord should come to me? For behold, when the voice of your greeting came to my ears, the babe in my womb leapt for joy. And blessed is she who believed that there would be a fulfillment of that which was spoken to her from the Lord." And Mary said this, "My soul magnifies the Lord. My spirit rejoices to God. For he has regarded the low estate of his handmaiden. For behold, henceforth all generations will call me blessed. For he who is mighty has done a great thing for me. Holy is his name. And mercy is on those who fear from generation to generation. He's shown strength with his arms. He's scattered the proud in the imagination of their hearts. He's put down the mighty from their thrones and exalted those of low degrees. He's filled the hungry with good things, and the rich he sent away empty. He has helped his servant Israel in the remembrance of his mercy." Two things real quick, right off the start. What does that mean? My soul magnifies the Lord. Think about that. Because I've been trying to work with you for years and getting into my own head this idea of what is non-duality? What does that mean to think in non-dual terms? Not to think of dualism as we're here and God's out there, but to think of God as the very ground of our being, as the theologian Paul Tillich had said. How does that even make sense then with this idea of my soul magnifies the Lord? What would that mean? Especially in this time of Advent. The second thing I want to suggest to you is that Mary and Elizabeth had what would be called a God moment. Have you had one of those before? You know, where you're talking to someone and then unexpectedly, all of a sudden, you got an insight you never expected, or you got a sense of compassion from one you never expected, or you suddenly felt something you participated in that just sort of lifted you, elevated you in that moment, and you think, oh, this is really special. This must have been a God moment, right? And what do I always say? Every moment's a God moment. They're all God moments. So this time of Advent, I want to think with you really quickly about a couple of things, because we are going to finish this up fast so we can get to the business, well, not the business, but the real inspiration of our time together today. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is this idea of what it means to magnify the Lord. And I want to think with you about Advent. Now last year, I don't know if you remembered, but last year, Linda and I had some fun. We were doing interviews in Wesley Hall over in the main building, and we were, during Advent, I had a cap. Do you remember what the cap said? It was my MAGA cap. Do you remember the MAGA cap? I'm not talking about that MAGA cap. I'm talking about the one that was purple, that stood for Make Advent Great Again. Because we typically think of Advent as just one of these holy seasons, one of these liturgical seasons that the mainline Protestant churches practice. A lot of other churches like Baptists and Bible churches and other non-denominational, they don't necessarily do that. But the mainline Protestants has been part of the historical liturgy of the Catholic Church and mainline churches like Presbyterian and Methodist. What does that even mean, Advent? So Linda and I set out to make Advent great again. And as I was thinking about that, I wished I'd worn the cap today. But what I wanted you to think about was those words we used last week. Those ideas of waiting, not meaning sitting, but the actual root word for waiting meaning to come alive, to be alive, to watch and wait is to be alive. And Advent is this idea of coming and going, so there's this life to it. There's not this waiting for something to happen. We think about it, and what do we say we're waiting for? Come on. Come on, people, talk back. What are we waiting for? Christmas. Presents. What are we waiting for? I heard it. The birth of the baby Jesus, right? We're waiting for the birth of the baby Jesus. Now, and so we sing songs and we go to Christmas Eve services and we do all of that. And listen, I love singing Silent Night as much as the next person with 1,000 voices and 1,000 candles lit. It's really moving. And I go there because I can't wait to be moved. I'm not listening to anything. I'm just waiting to be moved. But that's not what Advent is. Advent's something else. What does it mean, my soul magnifies the Lord? I've shared this story before, and I'm going to share this story again. Peter has told me it's one of his favorite stories, so my apologies for repeating it, but I think some of you will love hearing it again. So this fella, he's isolated, he's stranded on an island. He's all by himself, been there for years. It's not Tom Hanks, but he's been there for years. And so finally he's found, and when they find him, they notice there's 3 huts on the island. There's 2 kind of close together, and then there's another hut down the beach a little ways. And they ask him, they said, well, what did you buy? Who are these huts belong to? And he says, oh, they're mine. They said, well, what are these 2? Well, that's my home, he said. That's where I go to sleep, I'll eat, I'll read, that's my home. What's this other one? Well, that's my church. That's where I go for my sacred experience, for my sense of transcendence. That's where I go to worship. Well, what's this other one down the beach, they asked. He said, oh, that used to be my church. Those people are horrible. What does it mean for my soul to magnify the Lord? Keep that in the back of your mind here. What are we waiting for? What are we waiting for? So, my Advent was always around. When we designed Advent for our kids growing up, we always designed this sort of element of surprise, right? That's kind of what you love doing at Christmas time, providing surprises. And the Advent calendar, ours was a box that you open up the little doors every day. And each day we'd have chocolate, or we'd have a little trinket or something fun. And then we started to notice something, which you do too, which we all do as adults. We started to notice that our kids, our 2 boys, were expecting stuff, right? They were expecting something in there. If they had an empty box, they'd really be upset. And then I'd try to be creative, and I'd say, oh, use your imagination. They'd be like, I'd want to imagine something's in there. But they were always getting something, and we noticed that they'd start expecting that something to be in there. And so the next year, we did a new tradition. We practiced something that I've often talked about in here called living as if. And we started throwing in their little fortune cookie kinds of sayings that we created ourselves. Sometimes it would be a clue, like a little hidden sort of direction, follow this clue to something else, and then that to something else. Sometimes it would simply be a fortune that said, today you're going to have a great day. Or it might say, today, your best friend is going to do something for you. And they'd come back and they'd say, well, nothing happened. He didn't do anything for me. And then the next day there would be another one that said the same thing. And they'd say, well, maybe the problem is you have to already know that it's there. You have to already know that they've done something for you. Now try to act like that. And we'd have to kind of practice it. What would that be like if your friend really did something great? I'd feel great. I'd feel really wonderful. Okay, live that way today. See what happens. Then we'd have them come back and tell us about it. Then every now and then, just because that's tedious, we throw a piece of candy in there or something else. But we began to create this idea that Advent isn't so much about waiting for something to come to you as much as participating in making things happen. And I came to realize that what we were doing was we were creating a clandestine serendipity club. Think about that. A clandestine serendipity club. I want to suggest to you, as we start thinking about who we are, that that's who we've been. Maybe we haven't been living into it as much as we would like to, or as we recognize we need to, but that's maybe what we're a part of. So let me rephrase that phrase, my soul magnifies the Lord. What if we think non-dually, right? What if we think non-dually that we live and move and have our being, as the Apostle Paul told those Greeks that those Romans that he was talking to in Athens that time in Acts, that we live and move and have our being. This is the reality, the supernatural, the God. Or as Paul Tillich said, God is the very ground of our being. What if that is it? How does our soul magnify that? What does it mean to magnify that? My soul magnifies the very ground of our connectedness. What? Does it? I mean, that's rhetorical. You don't have to answer that, because if I were to answer that, I'd go like, sometimes? A little bit? What does it mean to say my soul magnifies the very ground of how we are interconnected one with another? How would I do that? What does it mean to be a lens to our interconnectedness with our enemies, with those who would disagree with us, with those uncomfortable places? What does it mean to not be waiting to be the magnifying lens through which that's seen, but to be the clandestine serendipity club, to be a part of that? So years ago, I had this great experience, and it wasn't my idea, but it worked perfectly. I was working at a camp. Brad has done some of these camps with me over the years, and now Brad's doing these oncology camps, pediatric oncology camps, and I had done one out east of Georgia, out near Athens, and it was a camp for kids with hemophilia. Now, here's the thing: kids who have hemophilia have an individualized disease, and they bond together over that, but it's not necessarily life-threatening. When you go to an oncology camp, nobody can do anything wrong, because everybody realizes they're living in the midst of finitude. They're living in the midst of a reality that just shuts things down. How do you live with that reality at your door? You participate in the clandestine serendipity club. Doesn't matter what, you just start doing stuff. You just start living life. You just start sharing life. That's why I have that wonderful app that I want all of you to go home and download called We Croak, so that you're reminded 5 times a day you're going to die. There's no gift better than to remember why we're here, to live fully, to magnify the ground of our interconnectedness. So here I am at this camp now. It's a hemophilia camp, and there's 2 cabins that are fighting with each other. 2 cabins of 3rd grade boys that are at each other's throats. They're playing mean-spirited pranks on each other that's disrupting the whole camp. It's creating all of this tension. The counselors are getting in on it. So I have one of the assistant directors at camp comes up to me and says, I got an idea, and she suggests that we go out for a storytelling thing in the middle of the night out on the lake, and that I tell the story of the lake monster. The legend of the lake monster. I said, I don't know the story of the lake. She said, make it up. So we got the boys on a big pontoon boat from both camps and the counselors, and we were sitting on the boat, and it's in the middle of the night, and it's getting late, it's dark, it's probably 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. Number one, we've already broken curfew, so now they know they're in on breaking the law together. There's still a little bit tense and animosity there, but they've managed not to fuss with each other. And they're focused on me telling this story. And right on cue, as I'm telling this story, and I've really got them lathered up with this sense of anxiety and dread because of the other stories I've told, that now I've got them hooked, and I'm sitting on the edge of the pontoon, and right at the moment when I start to talk about what this creature used to do in this lake, something comes out of the water, grabs me by the back, and draws me down into the water, drags me into the water with a splash. And it is silent. I snuck up underneath the pontoon between the two pontoons, and I'm sitting there quietly, and I hear someone say, "What just happened?" And then I hear a counselor say, "Do you think somebody needs to go in and look for him in there?" And then another kid from the other side said, "It's too late for Tom. We need to save ourselves." And so they take the boat and they go back to the shore, and I'm waiting for them on the shore. And they're stunned for a second, like maybe I've just resurrected. And then they realize the whole joke that's been pulled over their eyes. And then they realize that they've kind of been in on this. But for the rest of that night, those two cabins can't stop talking about how much fun and how each other was reacting to it. And they were laughing at each other. They said, "You said to leave Tom in the water and leave him there, you know." And then the others were like, "You really believe what was?" It just was a fun evening. And for the rest of that week, those two cabins became best of buddies. What does it mean to be a part of the clandestine serendipity club? How can you do that? How many ways can you participate in creating God moments? What if that's really what Advent is all about? What if our being here isn't so much about having the club that we belong to because we say the right things, as much as secretively being a part of reality that does the right things? I wonder if that's what Jesus was really wanting all along. Somehow that we begin to reveal, to magnify the interconnectedness of all of us, grounded in love. So let's talk about that a little bit. I'm going to invite Penny to come up here, and we're going to talk a little bit about what you all think about this idea of the clandestine serendipity club that we belong to. Or as I like to call it, a co-conspiracy. Now, we're going to share a few slides, a report on what's happening, on what you all said and what you did. It's not the whole report. We probably can have that up online at some point somewhere so you can read the whole report. But this is some of the stuff that you came up with. And as she runs through these slides quickly, we're going to have some time to maybe answer a couple of questions or field a couple of ideas or thoughts. And then I'll have a closing, and we'll sing a song together and head home. We're going to go a few minutes probably after 12, but not too much after that.
Whew. Okay. Thank you, everybody who participated in this. It was an honor, really, to have a chance to talk with you and to read through what you had to say. I already presented to the leadership of the church, and now I present to you, and I am asking your permission to hold your questions until the end so that we're sure to get all the information in. Okay, we started out with this methods and design. My background is research, so I have to share this with you. Population base of 350 people, 34% response, which is really remarkable for a study. Makes it completely significant. We had 32 one-hour interviews, honestly probably more than that. Additional email correspondences. We had the survey that went out that had a great response, again 34%, and in total over 150 interactions, or 45%, which means almost half of you participated in one way or another.
By the way, we probably could have both of our mics up just because I'll be commenting from time to time, but typically on these kind of things, you're looking at 10 to 15% is a pretty standard participation.
You hope for that if you're doing research. So you guys went way beyond, no surprise, a congregation of gifted and talented people.
By the way, also on the side note here, I get to look at the logistics or the data points of all the emails and e-blasts, and I know that we don't all read them, but out of the 400 or 500 people extended that have been a part of 1111, in comparison to the rest of the church, we have a 35% reader rate compared to 10 to 20% with all the other things. I'm just saying you people like what you got here.
Yeah, and your participants. Okay, so I started out asking why. Why do you belong to 1111? Why do you come? And here are some direct quotes. You might even recognize your own. Burned or wounded in prior church experiences. We go different ways and often end up casualties. There was an overwhelming focus on stories where people felt that they felt disconnected from their church background because they felt what was being said was intolerable, or that they were disconnected from those people, that they were not tolerated. Or they said we couldn't relate to real life experiences to what was being said at our church. Next slide. So why did they choose 1111? Again, here are some quotes. Service has opened questions and forced me to think deeply about my beliefs. High energy, positivity, lowers barriers. Adjectives that kept coming through were things like open-minded, casual, unconditional, positive regard, not traditional, but very spiritual. What about the messages? Next slide. And here people were speaking specifically about Tom's messages. It's not about getting the answers, it's about embracing the questions. Messages jolt me sometimes. It makes me pay attention to my life and God. And third point, and this came over and over and over, there is an intellectual draw. It is a calm space for scholars, for thinkers. Another point that came through is that people appreciated not just studying the Bible, but studying other theological and philosophical sources as well, broadening their understandings and helping them to realize that we're all connected, we're all one. Regardless of where you go on Sunday or Saturday, we have common understandings. Next slide. A big point. People really appreciated the music. Over and over again, people said that the music made a significant difference for them in their worship experience, not just here, but bringing it out into the broader world. Hearing those songs in new ways and seeing that there really was a connection in a much broader sense to the world and our connection to it. People also talked about how do we support the band better. Lots of people were surprised that the band was actually salaried and needed to be. And then as we talked, they said, of course, they're professionals. And the fact that they're professionals is what makes it possible for them to sing so many kinds of music every Sunday. Next slide. And what about Tom? You had
Take him or leave him.
Yeah, you had a lot to say about Tom. Very caring, very supportive, very insightful remarks about Tom. People appreciated that he's not only a preacher, which is a really big job, but he's also a musician, and he's also a storyteller, as we saw today. In quick, brief, very brief conversations, the thought of Tom's retirement came up when we talked about Tom. And one of the things people said was, how do you find someone who has all those qualities? We were in agreement on that. Next slide. Really important part of the study was the affiliation, the connection here with the 1111 community to the big church. Being part of the Methodist community, was it important to us? People came back and said yes. In many ways, we're stronger together. Value the connection Credit to FUMC to support a community that is seeking. A little bit different from what's going on, perhaps, sometimes in the main church. Loyalty to Methodist tradition and the reputation for openness and progressive thought was something people felt very strongly about. And a credit to the big church, credit to Tom, credit to the leadership, and honestly, credit to us as a congregation.
And I would just jump in to say this was probably of all of them, just so I can say this now so if I forget it later, this was actually one of the most surprising points for me, is how high the percentage was of people who really love still being connected with the traditional church or the wider church. Because, one of the things I've always talked about is the church is sort of like, instead of having 4 walls, it's kind of like 3 with an open wall, where you just kind of, people come and go, people come in the way they are, where they are, who they are. They may have to leave for a time. They keep coming back. It's never this sort of closed community. And so keeping that open, it's like all the cousins that you met with and the relatives that you met with over Thanksgiving, and you had to go, I guess I can sit down next to them. I guess we can have dinner together. But the reality is, yeah, we can all be at the table together. Anyway, so I was really surprised. I was glad to see that.
That's cool. Okay, so let's look at the key findings. 90% of the people who responded said their spiritual needs are being met here at the 11:11 service. People talked about Tom's scholarship and knowledge as critical in this experience. People said Brad's music, leadership, and the band are essential contributors to the experience. 90% of you felt that way. Association with the big church is important. 93% of you felt that way. Members prefer being located on church property. Is that interesting? 75%. And I want to say here, it wasn't that people didn't like being in this setting. This setting is lovely, beautiful. The issues came for those people who have a hard time going to Sunday school and then coming over here if there are weather issues. Another concern was the problem with not being able to meet with people at the information center and being able to chat and catch up on things before people go to their different services. Another was not having access to some of the services or opportunities at the big church easily. And that would include using the library or being part of outreach programs that are going on over there. I really want to be clear, it wasn't this space. People love this space. It was the distance that seemed to keep coming through over and over again. And I won't say that was a surprise, but to the leadership as I gave the report, but I think it was important that it was affirmed. That was how people felt. Do you want to add anything to that?
No, good. Yeah, we're good.
Okay. The study concluded in September, and a significant amount of data continued to come in. More key findings. 80% participate in outreach and mission efforts. That was important for the church leadership to know. It isn't like you're an island over here not participating. You are. 80% of those of us who go here felt that we were very interested in outreach and mission efforts. Online services are needed. That's not news. That's just insight on your part. Because as the world is changing and growing, whether we like it or not, online services are an important part of our lives. Online contact with other organizations is part of our lives. You recognize that. Very progressive, forward thinking. More small group opportunities should be explored. Isn't that interesting? Between 35 and 55% of you identified different types of small groups you'd like to be a part of to expand your relationships, not just here on Sundays, but within the context of the week. Members want to be part of efforts to grow membership, expand connections, and more. We talked a lot about membership, people coming to this service. And one of the things people said was, it's probably the best kept secret in Fort Worth. And how many people we all know who would probably benefit from being able to come here for the reasons that we come here, for the scholarship, for the thinking, for the inclusiveness, for the people who tried church at one time in their lives and it just didn't work. Next slide. So how do we do that? Well, you had lots of ideas, and I listed some of them here. People said they would like more involvement around the service. We're doing a little bit more of that now with calling people in to do things, but they would like more opportunity. One of the opportunities people talked about is being part of the conversation on what sermons topics might happen or might occur. Another one might be discussion of the sermons after the service. How might that occur? Others talked about things that could be going on in the context of the service that they might like to participate in or have suggestions for. Another idea was expand diversity and grow membership. There were people in the study who said, I'm a marketing person or I'm a design person, and I would like to be part of helping to make this membership expand out into the community. I would like to bring ideas into that. 1111 scholarship and progressive thinking, getting that message out. Connecting with Bright Divinity and other progressive groups in the community. And I know we talked about that a little bit at the big service. And then the 5th Street Coffee House. Do any of you remember that? How fun that was? Yeah, seeing if we might be able to bring that back again and what might that look like. All ideas on ways that we could begin to expand in a very general sense as we were in conversation through these interviews and general conversations. So, having said that,
You know, and while as we segue into answering some questions and discussing this for a few minutes, I wanted, Sharm, can I pester you for a second? If you have your phone, would you mind looking up the Facebook link and checking online? Because Elizabeth was going to be doing that this morning, but she's sick, and so I forgot to find someone. There may be somebody on Facebook watching who also has a question, and we wanted to make it possible for you out there watching that if you have a question, unfortunately, if you're watching through the church site, you can't engage with us live, but you can through the Facebook page at 1111's Facebook page. So there may be somebody with a question there as well. But I really love this report. I just say what I was really surprised about. Number one, Penny's leadership on this was tremendous, and she did an amazing job putting this all together and facilitating this, and it wouldn't be wrong to give her some applause for that. Yeah. And we hadn't formally been able to say congratulations either, because I was hoping to do that with Elizabeth here too. But Penny and Elizabeth were married 3 weeks ago on Thursday. I forget now, that 18th, of November. And of course, Linda was doing things, we couldn't be there. But so excited to have her and Elizabeth in this community again. And with this leadership, it's just tremendous. I'm so excited about this. And she'll continue to be a part of that as we look at future steering committee plans, and things like that. So if you have a question or comment, let me know. And,
next slide. Okay, yeah, cool. Okay, so this is what I was saying.
Yes, this is about the event,
Yeah, so this would be a next step for us, to form a steering committee, an 1111 steering committee, to talk about how we take this data and then move it into action steps. Things we would want to talk about in this committee would be ways to investigate, become more involved in the planning of the service. What are some ways that would make sense? Another would be investigate and expand small group interest and participation, talking about how we might begin to set that up and make that available to the larger group. And then investigate resources to expand membership and diversity. And that would be that marketing piece. So we're looking at forming a committee of interested people who would like to sit down and talk about this, ways that this could happen. And if you're interested in being part of this next step, we probably begin in January. And you would contact Tom.
Yeah, you could contact either of us, I guess. They could talk to you, and Sunday after church or, after service. But definitely contact me if you're interested in that. And we're going to talk more about that as we come into the new year for sure, but I want to see what we have in terms of comments right now and questions that you have as a result of what you've read, what you've seen here.
Before we do questions, let me also just say that it was really important that the big church, Lance and Tim and the decision makers over there, heard our collective gratitude for them being able and willing to pay for this,
Right.
first of all, because they
it
did
was
pay
funded.
me to do this, and also that they were willing to hear what we had to say, because there's a good possibility some of the things we might say might not always be comfortable, because we're kind of challenging all the time, right? And it's way easier if people just be quiet and just go along. So I made sure they understood our gratitude for that. Okay.
Yeah. So
Question.
your thoughts and comments, Bronson.
You alluded to this a bit, but one of the things that I take pride in is being associated with the so much invested in mission and all kinds of things that are so very important.
That's right. We do participate in the various outreach ministries that this church does, which are significant in this city, have been for decades. And being a part of that allows us both to participate in it, to invest in it, but also to participate in it in person. So there's all sorts of wonderful opportunities because of this community, this wider community. Thanks. Something else?
I love seeing why I come to this church putting this out. I also wanted to piggyback on why I love being a part of the big church is for her, because
This way people online can hear too.
okay. So I love being a part of the big church is for Ella, because when Ella gets that foundation from the big church before we start throwing philosophy at her, right? So getting that foundation and being a part of the kids ministry, we have an amazing kids ministry over there. I get to be a part of that. She gets to be a part of that. We get to grow together. But then also she knows it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to, not just follow the script. We don't have to follow that script. And Tom, you're really great about that. That's why I love coming here. And I hope one day that's why she loves coming here. So, yeah.
Thanks. Thank you. Yeah.
Just to add, piggybacking off of that that we've talked about trying to grow. And the closer we are to the available childcare in the big building might increase the folks who would be able to come to our service.
Good point. Yeah.
That's a really good point, because one of the things that came out of the study was an 11:11 Sunday school for kids, which I thought was a cool idea. Other questions?
I guess using this data, what is the plan with the big church as their construction goes forward for a place for 1111 in the big church? Has that been planned or fleshed out?
It hasn't been, I wouldn't say it's been finalized. There's been some general directions of where that might go, but nothing is final in print. The primary investors for Wesley Hall's renovation were members of the gathering, and it is very likely that the gathering might go back in there in the first hour. That's, again, it's not even likely to be finished until, who knows? I mean, they keep finding things that need to be added to the timeline. So right now we're looking at February, maybe March, maybe April. It's just we're still kind of up in the air. Some of that also depends on the results of this study and our dialogue with leadership, and so which we've already begun, as Penny alluded to. So yeah, so it's unclear. Right now the trends look like we would be still in this building for the foreseeable future, which again would still be connected, but we'd be in this building. But that's still, I hate to put a point on it. I hate to put a fine point on it just yet. Yeah.
I think for me, just being able to see the results of the survey, it's really just a huge confirmation. We moved to the downtown area about 3 years ago and really tried to find a place to fit in. So we tried the more traditional service to come here. And so seeing this survey confirms what others are feeling in terms of what draws them to the church. But data is power also, so it gives you an idea because you don't want to stay stagnant. So identifying those things that allows us to continue to grow, I think, is equally important. So really appreciate the work that you put in.
Yeah, yeah. Some other questions. I know there's some others out there.
Well, we talk about getting 1111 better known throughout the community. My question goes to the other services. How well do they know us? I mean, when we first had coffee with Sharm a while ago, she said they think we bite heads off of chickens over here.
Yeah.
But this is very telling.
That's the next level of discipleship in our community is the chicken head biting part. Yeah, that comes later.
But the survey's very telling. I mean, and it tells people we're not weirdos. We're very involved and very into our faith and into faith in action. So.
You know, the fastest growing religious community is the not religious, not spiritual, but not religious, right? The fastest growing church community are the folks not going to church. Younger and younger generations not going to church. They've now outstripped those who are going to church. So almost 60% of the surveyed people don't go, as compared to 20 years ago, 30 years ago, even 15 years ago. When you're saying that there's a community, there's a group of people out there. I mean, I'm online all the time with groups who are deconstructing their faith. They're what you might call ex-evangelicals, if you will, or others who are just what's the word I'm looking for now? The folks who've kind of given up on church, they no longer resonate with what they had experienced. It just no longer speaks to them, perhaps. So all of those folks are still a part of the community. This offers an opportunity to continue to explore spirituality in an open-minded way that doesn't have to put a point on it or put a definition on it, but allows that exploration. And then to do so with an engaging kind of experience, which I think is pretty amazing. We're pretty blessed to be able to be here and to do this. So, yeah, I think that's a big part of where this goes in the future. How do we reach out? How do we connect? How do we let people know?
So for future 1111 sustainability, in the sausage making of the politics, and I know this is a nuanced question.
Yeah, because you don't want to know what goes into it.
I know what goes into it. At least I have an idea. It's more of a comment, I guess, than a question, and I don't want to put you on the spot too much, Tom, but this is so unique and such an anomaly. This does not happen in other parts of the United States. If it does, we don't know about it. I'm sure it does somewhere, right? But 1111 is an amazing phenomenon. As we continue towards the future, and Tom, you and me are getting older.
Speak for yourself.
There you go. And we don't know what's going to happen in the UMC. We have no clue. But the itinerary, that's code language, but the itineracy is an interesting animal. And it's more of a comment than a question, but I'm very hopeful that we as a congregation, both collectively and individually, will have input into whoever will
future leadership.
Yeah, and that's all I'm going to say, but you know where I'm going with that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that's a good segue for us to move into our closing, because I did promise we'd be out around about 12:15, and I want to honor that because we're right at that point now. That's a great segue, though, to that point. First of all, I want us to begin to continue to see this community as something we participate in that is... no, we had a question online. I didn't honor... I need to... Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yes, that's a very wise word from Debbie. We appreciate that. We are, as I've often said in here, everybody is welcome in this room, which means oftentimes we have to sometimes identify with our own narrow-minded focus on where we are, our distinctiveness, our progressiveness, or whatever, and suddenly we realize we can't speak to the other side. We're not inviting LGBTQ, Republican, Democrat, the binary realities of our world. If anything, I hope 1111 invites dismantling the binaries. and every opportunity to be clandestine about ways of reminding each other we are interconnected. And how can we do that? How many different ways can we do that? Now, you can go out this week, as we get ready to segue to our blessing here, you can go out this week, and what I encourage you to do this whole Advent season, last week I talked about seeing waiting as being active, as watching. This time, look for places where people have been clandestine, this is not a verb, clandestinely, where they've been acting in a clandestine way, and you've experienced a moment you didn't expect. How did that get there? People are participating in bringing about love and connection in ways we don't know, but we sense it. And then begin to ask yourself, how can I be in this moment that's uncomfortable or difficult? How can I do this a little more intentionally and in a clandestine way? Trickster Makes the World is a wonderful book by Lewis Hyde. It talks about how, when you think about it, it's not the obvious things that change the world. It's the stuff that happens underneath, underlying, the commitment that individuals bring to every moment that changes the world. So that's what we're invited to do, and that's what I invite you to do this week as we think about it. Yes?
Two things. One, if a person would like to read the actual study,
Yeah.
how do they access it? And two, if they want to be on the steering committee, who do they talk to?
Yeah, you would talk to me first, but if you run into her, she'll let you know too, because I might be busy on Sunday after this, you might want to talk to her. So I invite you to participate in some clandestine behavior this week, and let's co-conspire together to make things happen, and that's what I'm going to be inviting you into in the future. For now, let's stand and have our benediction, our blessing. I always love this blessing. I'll have to come up with another one, but I love this one. Go in pieces. Our time is ended. Our ways of thinking sometimes upended. And yet something new is always being invited and mended. So go in pieces. And as we travel, we unravel together, and in that we start to find that connected line that brings about the love that is the very ground of our being that we can participate in for others. So, go in pieces.
Sing with us, come on. Let the river run, let all the trees wake the nation.